The midsummer economy. Is the U.S. heading towards a recession? The midsummer economy. A gradual decline. A slow-motion economic crisis. It's quite simple to scrutinize the Trump administration and highlight the numerous significant economic blunders it has made. Yet, it's crucial to understand that these economic missteps do not automatically result in a recession, nor do they guarantee a catastrophic economic collapse, despite what some critics might predict. Interestingly, some of these economic errors can counterbalance each other. For instance, substantial tax reductions for the wealthy might be countered by cuts to Medicaid and research funding. The former could lead to an increase in demand, while the latter diminishes demand both directly and indirectly. Although it's easy to criticize both policies, the economic issues they create, such as the unnecessary enrichment of the wealthy, tend to offset each other, at least in the short term. Before delving deeper into the economic landscape at the 6-month mark of the Trump administration, it's essential to remember how slowly a crisis can unfold. I observed the housing bubble develop from 2002, which was evidently propelling the economy forward, marked by a significant increase in housing construction and consumer spending fueled by the equity generated from the housing bubble. Initially convinced in the summer of 2002 that the surge in housing prices was a bubble, one not supported by the fundamental aspects of the housing market, I anticipated a swift peak followed by a downturn, similar to the stock market bubble's collapse in 2000. Contrary to my expectations, the bubble continued to inflate until the summer of 2006. Housing prices soared far beyond the levels I had noted in 2002 when I first recognized the bubble. The poor lending practices that were already apparent in 2002 escalated to the point of becoming a running joke within the industry. Terms like liar loans and ninja loans, standing for no income, no job, no assets, became commonplace in discussions about housing finance. To clarify, the dishonesty was driven by both lenders and borrowers. We had established a securitization system where profits were generated from issuing loans rather than from ensuring that homeowners would repay them. Mortgage issuers were eager to provide loans they had no expectation of being repaid, knowing they could resell nearly anything in the secondary market. Ultimately, the fun came to an end by the summer of 2006, when the subprime market largely froze and housing prices began to decline. Nevertheless, the economy remained robust, achieving a growth rate of 2.8% for the entire year. This growth persisted through most of 2007, which recorded a 2% growth rate for the year. Job creation ceased in December 2007, and the recession gradually accelerated in 2008 as a trickle of bank failures transformed into a deluge. By October, the Treasury Secretary, along with the Fed chair and the head of the New York Federal Reserve Bank, rushed to Congress demanding hundreds of billions to rescue the banks, warning that without this financial support, capitalism itself was at risk. This stroll down memory lane serves to illustrate that even in the face of a clearly disastrous situation, the repercussions can take a significant amount of time to manifest. The U.S. economy is often likened to a massive oil tanker at sea, which requires considerable distance to slow down and come to a halt. This analogy may even underestimate the force of economic momentum, as the U.S. economy had substantial momentum heading into 2025, a fact that the media can now acknowledge with the election behind us. Current economic landscape. It's somewhat perplexing that many commentators continue to discuss the economy as if it is thriving. While we are not officially in a recession, the economy did contract by 0.5% in the first quarter. This decline was influenced by unusual factors, such as a surge in imports as households and businesses prepared for anticipated tariffs. However, there's no way to spin the data from that quarter into a positive narrative. Job creation has significantly slowed down. We had been adding jobs at a rate of 170,000 per month through 2024, but in the first half of this year, job growth averaged only 130,000 per month. It's important to note that this slowdown is primarily due to the tightening immigration restrictions that began last June under Biden, yet it still results in reduced demand and economic growth. There is also evidence suggesting that wage growth has decelerated. The annualized growth rate, comparing the last 3 months, April-June, with the previous 3, January-March, stands at just 3.2%, down from a 4% pace in 2024. This averaging method is my preferred approach to gauge wage growth, as it mitigates the impact of erratic monthly data. Nevertheless, the degree of slowing may appear different with the addition of another month's data. Furthermore, there are indications that tariffs are beginning to influence inflation. Although the Consumer Price Index, CPI, remains relatively stable, the downward trend observed throughout 2024 seems to have reversed. June marked the first month where the government collected significant revenue from Trump's tariffs, amounting to $26 billion compared to $6 billion in June of the previous year. This $20 billion difference translates to an annualized figure of $240 billion, making it one of the largest tax increases in history. Over a decade, this amounts to $2.4 trillion, or approximately $1,900 per household annually, totaling $19,000 over 10 years. That's a substantial financial burden for most families. To clarify, exporters are not the ones bearing the cost of these tariffs. If they were, we would see a decrease in import prices, which are measured before the tariff. Instead, import prices have been rising this year, following a similar trajectory as last year. This indicates that someone, be it importers, retailers, or consumers, will ultimately bear the cost of the tariffs. The June CPI revealed significant increases in the prices of clothing, appliances, home furniture, and audiovisual equipment. These price hikes do not yet reflect the full impact of the tariffs, partly because retailers had built up large inventories in anticipation of the tariffs and are currently selling off those stocks before raising prices. Additionally, many companies, particularly auto manufacturers, are hesitating to raise prices until they ascertain whether the tariffs will remain in place. They may be willing to accept lower profit margins temporarily to avoid losing market share, but this is unlikely to continue if the tariffs persist. The tariffs are expected to exert a considerable drag on demand in the latter half of 2025 and beyond, especially if Trump follows through with the higher tariffs he has proposed for August 1st. In this context, it's noteworthy that real wages dipped by 0.1% in July. While this decline is minor, the combination of slowing nominal wage growth due to a weakening labor market and rising inflation from tariffs will likely dampen or reverse the real wage growth we had been experiencing, thereby constraining consumption. Tariffs will also adversely affect manufacturing. Nearly half of our imports are production inputs. Tariffs on manufacturing items, such as Trump's 50% tariff on imported steel, significantly impact automobile production and other industries. If these tariffs remain, the increased costs are likely to overshadow any potential incentives for domestic production. The Trump tariffs are likely to ensure that the Biden factory boom, where real construction was more than double in 2024 compared to 2019, fades rapidly. While the factories being constructed due to the Infrastructure Bill, the CHIPS Act, and the Inflation Reduction Act may be completed, some may not. It's improbable that many new projects will commence in the current climate. The economic repercussions from the tariffs will be compounded by the effects of budget cuts, primarily in healthcare, education, and research. The healthcare cuts have been widely reported. The Republican budget anticipates over $800 billion in cuts to Medicaid over the next decade, roughly 10% of projected spending in the program and just under 1% of total spending. Although most of these cuts are not expected to take effect until the end of 2026, after the election, we are already witnessing their impact, along with the effects of cuts to subsidies for the Obamacare exchanges. Hospitals and other providers must plan for the future, knowing that their revenue will be significantly lower than previously anticipated. This situation may lead to the curtailment of expansion plans in some cases, while in others, it could result in downsizing or even closures. Rural hospitals are already under severe strain, with over 100 forced to shut down in the last decade. This trend will likely accelerate due to the Republican cuts, depriving communities of healthcare access and resulting in job losses. The deportation of workers by Trump will also play a role here. Many immigrants held low-wage jobs in the healthcare sector. Hospitals, nursing homes, and other facilities will struggle to replace them and will likely have to offer higher wages when they do. This will further hasten the loss of hospitals and other providers. Notably, healthcare has been the leading sector for job growth over the past 3 years. Budget cuts and the reduction of immigrant labor will sharply hinder growth in this sector. The decline in immigrant labor is also expected to impact construction. Trump's economic triumph. Jobs, tariffs, and Fed showdown in 2025. Imagine a world where economic growth and political turmoil collide head-on, leaving the fate of an entire nation hanging in the balance. This is the reality of President Trump's economic team as they navigate a stormy sea of tariffs and interest rates. Amidst a heated standoff between President Donald Trump and Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell, the White House is proudly waving a banner of economic success. The latest report from the White House Council of Economic Advisors for the first half of 2025 paints a picture of a resilient economy, one that's weathering the storm of political tension remarkably well. But here's where it gets controversial. The Council's data shows that tariffs, often criticized for their potential to spark inflation, are not the economic villains many fear. In fact, they're not causing the inflationary pressures some experts predicted. This finding challenges conventional wisdom and sparks a debate about the true impact of tariffs on the economy. Let's dive deeper into this economic drama. At the heart of the conflict is Powell's reluctance to lower interest rates. This stance, rooted in the Fed's cautious approach to managing inflation, has put him at odds with Trump, who's pushing for aggressive rate cuts to fuel job growth and boost consumer spending. And this is the part most people miss. Powell's wait-and-see approach has kept the central bank's key borrowing rate within a narrow range of 4.25% to 4.5%. But Trump's bold call for a 1% rate cut, citing a strong job market and cooling inflation, has set the stage for a high-stakes showdown. So who's right? Is Powell's cautious approach the key to long-term stability? Or is Trump's aggressive strategy the only way to keep the economy on track? Share your thoughts in the comments below. The labor market is showing signs of strength. U.S. employers added 147,000 jobs in June, beating expectations. The unemployment rate dipped to 4.1%, a welcome sign of a healthy economy. Manufacturing output rose by 1.8% between January and June, reversing a 0.7% decline in the 5 months leading up to Trump's inauguration. Retail sales jumped by 0.6% in June, exceeding expectations and signaling strong consumer confidence. While tariffs have been a contentious issue, the numbers tell a different story. So far in 2025, tariff revenues have reached a staggering $128.9 billion, with June alone generating over $27 billion in customs duties. What's your take on this economic drama? Is Trump's focus on tariffs and rate cuts the key to continued growth? Or is Powell's cautious approach the safer bet? Let's hear your thoughts in the comments below.